Hey guys, I had a question from a woman in one of my group coaching groups. She asked, I don't understand the ratio of eating fewer carbs on rest days and more carbs on workout days. So it was a statement, but question. And I figured I'd answer that and just put it out there because I think this is it's an important concept and something that a lot of people don't understand. Carb cycling is what that's called. Basically eating a different number of carbohydrates on different days. Donna asked about rest days versus training days, which is one form of carb cycling. Another form, which we'll get into in a second here, is eating fewer carbs for many days in a row and then having a high carb day. There's a lot of ways you can do it. But to start, there's two reasons why we carb cycle, and they're pretty different. One, if you're trying to gain muscle. The second is if you're trying to lose fat. If you're trying to gain muscle, the reason that you would eat more carbohydrates on a workout day and fewer carbs on a rest day is because, so to back up a second, guys, girls who want to gain muscle ideally want to do it without gaining fat. So what I would program for these people is higher calorie workout days and then bring calories down a little bit on rest days, closer to their maintenance level. On workout days, if you're eating 300 to 800 more calories than your maintenance, you may store some fat. And dietary fat is easier for the body to store as fat than carbohydrates. So you would go lower fat, high carb on workout days to prevent fat storage. Okay? And then on rest days, we would have fat higher and carbs lower because, we still want to have a moderate to high amount of fat in our diet because fat serves many benefits, right? Brain, organ functions, vitamin absorption, high testosterone levels, keeping other hormones in check. So fat in general is a good thing, but in a calorie surplus, it would be better to have fat lower, okay? So that's for the muscle gainers. And this is going to be a brief, 7-ish minute video I'm planning on. So there's obviously more to all of this, but just a brief overview. For fat loss, why do we carb cycle? So like I just said, we need fat. If we do an example here, say we have a guy, Billy, who's 200 pounds and 22% body fat, and he wants to lose fat. His maintenance level is in the 2200 calorie range. I feel like I'm saying a lot of twos. So if his maintenance is 2200 and we have him at a decent deficit, so he's eating 1600 calories a day, 1600 cals, 200 grams of protein, we'll just say a gram per pound of body weight, which is 800 of those 16 are coming from protein. Okay, and now say that we weren't going low carb. We had him at a moderate carb intake. He weighs 200, we'll say 150 grams of carbs, which would be 600 calories of carbohydrates. So 600 calories from carbs, 800 from protein. I don't know if you can read this, but that only has him at 200 remaining calories from dietary fat, which is 22 grams of fat per day. Way too low for someone who weighs 200 pounds. So what we're going to need is a higher fat, lower carb diet in a calorie deficit. We got to keep protein up. We're either sacrificing carbs or fat, and we're going to sacrifice carbs. Where the carb cycling comes in for fat loss, and the most popular form of carb cycling for fat loss is a cheat day or a refeed, once every 5 to 15 days, I would say. Depending on if you're leaner, you can have more frequent cheat days. If you have a higher body fat percentage, you'll have less frequent cheat or refeed high carb days. But you would be on something like 200 grams of protein, something higher, 50 to 65 or 70 grams of fat, and then a much lower carb intake. And over time, this is going to decrease your leptin levels, your thyroid hormone levels, T3 and T4. I'm not going to get into the specifics of that, but a lower lower calorie diets decrease those hormones. Those hormones help with fat burning. Okay, so when those hormones are lower, your BMR is actually going to decrease, your metabolism, and you're going to burn fewer calories. So by having a high carb day, by carb cycling, we bump up BMR, get our hormonal environment in a healthier state, and we're burning more calories. Keeps us on track. So rather than like 200 grams of protein, 150 carb, and hardly any fat, for most days it would be like 200, 65, 70 fat, and whatever's left in carbs. And then on a refeed, bring calories back up to 2200, most of that coming from carbs and moderate to low fat. Okay, hormones. I touched on this. Leptin levels in T3, T4 are the hormones that help with fat loss that are basically taking a beating during a calorie deficit. So we carb cycle, give those hormones a boost, continue burning fat. Lastly, personal preference and the type of training you're doing. Some people just do well on moderate to high carb diets. I mean, it's going to be moderate if you're in a deficit. Other people do well on higher fat diets and lower carb diets. And some of that has to do with insulin sensitivity, taste, what kind of foods you like, just what makes you feel better in general. It also, the type of training you're doing will affect this. So if you're doing a lot of high intensity anaerobic work, you are going to need a higher carb diet to keep your muscle glycogen stores full. All right? You're pulling carbs from the muscles to fuel that type of training. So if you go really low carb, your performance is going to suffer. Whereas someone who is just trying to lose weight, maybe they're lifting a little bit, maybe they're not lifting much at all, sedentary lifestyle, office worker, generally that person isn't going to need as many carbs. Their muscle glycogen, the energy they use in their day-to-day life is coming from other sources than muscle glycogen, so we don't need carbohydrates to refill that. Okay? So, are you a carb or a fat person in general? Are you a fat person? Which one do you like? Optimizing hormone intake and keeping fat levels reasonably high are kind of the reasons for carb cycling. Trying to think if there's anything else. I keep seeing this ridiculous haircut in this video. What do you guys think? Kind of shaved on the side with long on top. Jean Romero cut it yesterday. I think it's kind of Justin Bieber-ish, but I don't know. I think I'm okay with it. Carb questions, post below. Otherwise, you all have a great day. See ya.